With Halloween and Samhain just around the corner in the Northern Hemisphere, this episode of Crystal Confab comes with a word of warning. Although humans can handle a really good scare, be careful around trees because sometimes trees can become so scared they become petrified. And that's exactly what we're talking about today. We're talking about petrified wood. And joining me are two people that, for some reason, are shaking their heads. I think I got something wrong here. Nicholas and Kyle, is that not how petrified wood is formed, Nicholas?
Oh, I'm speechless at the quality of that dad joke. So,
I'm rather proud. So we are talking about petrified wood. Of course, it isn't scared wood, but it is wood that is turned into stone. One of the really interesting things about when we're talking about the crystal world, not all crystals that we talk about are necessarily crystals. Some classic examples would be things like obsidian, jet, and amber, and petrified wood kind of into that category as well, although there is actually some crystalline stone formation in it as well. So I know, Kyle, you're a really big fan of this, and you've got just a few pieces with you, haven't you?
Listen, it was a tough to choose, but it would have been rude not to have brought through this, which is probably one of my favorite pieces in my whole collection. This is a Madagascan petrified wood slice. I think they're somewhere between 160 and 200 million years old, that sort of Triassic period. As someone who suffers with being impatient, this is definitely one that has been very useful for me. And it's just so amazing. Like, this is my dream, is to go and visit the petrified wood forests in west coast of America.
Have you ever been to them, Nicholas?
I have made it relatively close by, but I've never actually gone. So, like the most famous one, the national park that's called the Petrified Wood is in Arizona. I've been to Arizona a handful of times. I've just not actually gone there. It's not really near a large center of population. It's not just down the road from Tucson or Phoenix. And so I've never really added it to an itinerary. But I will say that at my day job, I see a whole lot of petrified wood. We have quite the collection at the museum. I think it must have been uh, a special interest, if not of the founders, the Gillespies, then maybe of some of the early staff, the first curator, the first director, now both emeriti. But we have so many different kinds of petrified wood there. Most of what we know as petrified wood is, in fact, what we could call agatized or silicified wood. It undergoes a process of permineralization where a mineral replaces its structure, and that's what creates that fossil. So, what we've just seen some examples held up are great examples of this silicified wood. But we've got some pretty weird stuff in the museum too. We have cuprite after wood. We have some opalized wood, which I know that Kyle's also a fan of. I've got a little piece here from Nevada. This one still has some of the kind of bark texture intact. We also have a really weird opal in wood specimen. It's organic wood with inorganic opal grown on top of it. And I think probably my favorite and most obscure piece, which unfortunately needs some major restoration, is copper in wood. So it is a slice of organic wood from a pit excavated on the island of Cyprus. Some of the earliest known copper workings in human history are there. Some of the most significant copper deposits of the kind of ancient and classical world. And so embedded in this actual piece of organic wood are tiny crystals of native copper. And that is something I look forward to having restored once I figure out how we're going to do that. But I think petrified wood is a pretty great rock.
Definitely. Is it something that it comes from various locations around the world, or like a lot, or is there specific places that seem to have created the right circumstances for it to form?
It is pretty common. In the museum's collection, we've got examples from, as I just mentioned, Cyprus, many parts of the US. We have some from Madagascar. I have some in my collection from Indonesia and England, of course. You can find it all throughout the world. I mean, there are fine examples of the so-called crystallized wood from Germany. You can find some from Egypt, believe it or not. It's pretty widespread.
Now, Kyle, you talked about it being really good for patience, and I guess because it's because of part of its formation story. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, patience has definitely been a big part. And I want to shout out to Turkey as well. This is where I've got from Chrysocolla petrified wood, another amazing example of what can replace petrified wood. I started, I think I found my first piece when I was in Europe. I've talked about this European trip. This is a piece of Brazilian petrified wood. I bought this when we were in Amsterdam, and this little piece, I love it. It's got like a really simple shape. It's got the natural kind of sides, like it's like a little piece of tree. You can kind of feel it, see it, connect to it. It was my beginning point, and then you end up here. That shows you how little patience I have and how much I need to work on the lesson. I've always said, and I say it in readings all the time, I say it to people, I will get patience tattooed on my forehead backwards so I can see it every day, because I find myself rushing all the time, all that fire, all that air that embodies who I am. I'm constantly trying to move, and I will injure myself in small ways regularly, stub toes, fracture arms, cut myself. I'm constantly like being reminded to slow down by the universe. And I found petrified wood to be the best embodiment for me of that lesson, because it goes, I was alive, then I died, then I was replaced really slowly. Then you had to wait many millions of years, and now I'm here, and now I'm cut, and now I'm beautiful. Like, we can kind of be patient through all of the process. I feel myself slowing down as I'm holding this piece. It's like, it's less about being patient, because when you're told to be patient, that's when you become even more impatient. That's when you become even more frustrated, even more like, oh, I'm going to hit you with this slab. It's like, no, it's about the process. It's about some things take a bit more time. Some things have more complex, more varied, more expansive things that are trying to influence what happens next. That sometimes we need to wait for those pieces of the puzzle to come into place. Sometimes we need to take a moment, distract ourselves, occupy yourselves. Maybe it's about preparing yourself for what's next. Maybe it's about readying yourself for a busy time that is to come. Maybe it's actually letting you know that what you want will come. What is happening is happening. Maybe you just need to start that thing that you wanted to start on the side. All of a sudden, you've got this time. Why don't you fill it with something? Why don't you start meditating more, going to the gym more, utilizing that spare time better? All of a sudden, you're less patient because you're using your time more wisely. Having purpose is part of removing that need to be patient for me, knowing that I have something to do, something to focus my energy on. Sometimes it's rest, right? Sometimes it's actually focusing your energy on resting. Maybe that's why something isn't happening. Maybe that's why things are delayed. We deal with it all the time. As adults, it becomes much more clear that there are so many factors out of our control. And if we can let those go, we can feel less like we need to control things and be impatient and need to rush the process. Like, this has taken so much time to get here, and we appreciate it. We love it. And that is true of all gems and minerals, right? All things that come from Mother Earth, all things like oils and crystals and art. Like, it takes time, it takes process, it takes energy for it to come forward for us to enjoy. So if we can occupy our time better, we can let these things happen better, we can bring them into our lives better, we can be more patient, be less inclined to rush the process. And that's where a couple of the other flavors of the petrified wood have really taught me a lot. Like, the Chrysocolla petrified wood has this kind of heartbeat of the earth. It really teaches me the cyclic nature that we're in. Like, this is where you are right now, and this is where the world is right now, and this is where that situation is right now. So there's the intersectionality of where things are and where you are. So you can be less like things need to be a certain way and more in the flow of things, which is really, really nice. I found it really supportive and calming. And then I have, this is the Indonesian blue opal petrified wood, and this one has copper in it, like Nicholas mentioned. And I love the blue opal energy. The copper energy goes straight into the heart. It goes straight into like removing that which is in the way. Like, patience and impatience can bring up like feelings of maybe being out of control, but maybe it's feelings of like being let down, being hard done by, not having. And it can kind of, for me, it's allowed those feelings to kind of come up and come out, because impatience is like that wanting, that needing, that like I've got to put my energy into something, right? And the opal aspect like taps into the emotion and allows that softness, allows that pent up anger or frustration. These are pieces that come from Lightning Ridge. They're beautiful little opalized petrified wood. It's like a message of stop, what's bubbling right now, let it go, take a moment, breathe, move on, allow yourself to be whatever it is, but stop trying to rush things, stop trying to make things happen quicker than they need to.
And we obviously seem to live in a world now that promotes instant gratification, getting things now and not waiting for things to come into the future, and just, yeah, the dopamine hits and so on. How do you find would be the best way for yourself and for other people, Kyle, to use petrified wood to bring in some of that patience when they want it now, when things aren't unfolding as quickly as they would like them to?
So I will sit morning and afternoon. Like, if I feel myself in like a week or whatever, a run of really high energy, I will make sure I do morning and afternoon, where I visualize myself with my petrified wood, putting my feet in the earth, imagining those roots growing into the earth, feeling myself grounded, feeling myself solid, feeling myself connected to where I am right now, and allowing that to 10-15 minutes of really stepping into feeling that connection. And then a bracelet as well to then go through the day, to take that energy through the day, so that I've got that reminder, whatever's happening, to just feet in the ground, roots. Without your roots in the ground, you're not getting enough nutrients. You're not, able to grow and become that thing that wants to do all the things that it wants to do. So it really helps me to kind of stop, be more in the moment, be less trying to think ahead, and it sort of orders the day better. And then I can get to the end of the day and do another sort of 10-15 minutes. If you can do this outside with your feet in the ground, in the grass, on dirt, it is all the better. If you can go for a walk in a park, that would be really, really good as well, to really kind of let go of anything that has built up during the day, and then like reconnect to yourself and reconnect to that kind of slowness and ease.
Nicholas, how do you find this magnificent stone to be really helpful for you?
I think about a couple of things. The kind of symbolism of a tree in general. We think of them as anchors in the landscape. They are not just singular beings, but communities. They host so many manners of organisms. Imagine the sheer age of what some of these mighty trees were before they were silicified, before they were replaced by some other mineral content, preserving their structure, their form, down to the very cells. And, we get this picture of something that is wise, that has witnessed a lot, that has been around for a long time, that literally has roots to stay grounded. And yet, like all living things, it's still ephemeral. And when conditions are just right, they can be preserved. And when all this comes together, this for me is a tool that symbolizes grounding into wisdom. And part of that wisdom is is knowing how to leverage what's happening around you for whatever your next chapter, your next step looks like. So, on the one hand, we get the kind of root level, no pun intended, of grounding when we feel spacey, when we feel like life is going too quickly, when maybe we feel run down and need some recharging. Petrified wood is such a wonderful ally for this. Historically, I've really loved things that actually look like little branches, like these guys here from Nevada. You could hold them. I love to place them below the feet in like layouts and grids and things as well, because there is this like wonderful kind of invitational quality to the way it grounds. It's not like hematite or pyrite or some of these other grounding stones that are dense. It's like putting an anchor in your hands and you're grounded. You're not going anywhere because you're so grounded. There there's something really mindful about the process of grounding with petrified wood that helps you be present with just how rooted you choose to be. And in being rooted firmly and being really present, we can also see things a bit more clearly. It frees up some of our mental, emotional, spiritual bandwidth to witness what's happening. And this is, I think, where the magic of petrified wood's formation process comes into play. Now, most trees that die don't turn into fossils. Most things that die don't turn into fossils because they get eaten away by microorganisms, or they get broken down by fungi, or they somehow cycled through our environment, through our ecosystems in different kinds of ways. However, when conditions are just right, when just the right amount of raw materials are present, when it is just wet enough but not too wet, when just the right amount of minerals are there, neither too many nor too few, just the right amount of oxygen or the lack thereof in most cases, so we don't get anaerobic respiration that's going to break it down, then maybe, just maybe, all of those what if statements can be leveraged to transform that organic material into something else. And so by grounding us into the moment, it also allows us to see what are the circumstances here that might preserve me, or maybe could contribute to the opposite thereof. And with petrified wood, there's a magic of transformation, a magic of alchemy, of just taking advantage of what you've got. I mean, think about the tree. I'm sure it was not happy to cease being a tree. The end of any organism's life, particularly something so wise and ancient as some of these massive trees were, is something that is, worthy of holding space for, of being comfortable with the fact that there is loss. But if we only stay in that mode, we lose the opportunity to look forward. And part of the wisdom, maybe born out of patience, like Kyle was talking about, is knowing when to act and when not to, when to settle in and let things just happen on their own. And sometimes it's a very fast process. Some processes of crystallization, of permineralization, are quite fast. Most of what we experience in petrified wood, that's not what's happening. There is this kind of incubation period. And so petrified wood can help us gather those little pearls of wisdom through life, accrete them, to learn not just from our own experience, but the experience of those who come before us, just like the roots are dug into the earth, drawing from whatever's in that bedrock, whatever's in that soil, whatever's been part of that landscape before. Because trees are these kind of community organisms, not just because they host other things, but often they're linked to other plants, other creatures through a mycelial network in the soil. They remind us that we are also part of an ecosystem, that our bodies are ecosystems, that we actually have, by count, more cells in our body that don't belong to us than do. Yeah, mostly because all those microorganisms are pretty darn tiny, but still, they're in there. I contain multitudes in so many different ways. And petrified wood can help me show up as my best self for my community, internally and externally. It helps me walk the path that has been laid down before me by previous generations in my practice, in my life, in my family on this land. It is something that helps us recognize where wisdom comes from and how it is acquired, often the hard way. That there wasn't just a flip we switched to transform that into petrified wood. It wasn't as simple as a jump scare. It's actually something that was born from a lot of time. And so if we can gather, just like molecule by molecule of silica replacing that organic tissue, if we can gather little pearls of wisdom, we can form this kind of crystal lattice, the scaffold that helps us endure, that helps us transform when things feel fragile and vulnerable into something that maybe isn't permanent, but is going to be able to handle the weathering, the erosive forces of time so much better. So, like Kyle, I've got a fair bit of petrified wood in my collection. I have a special fondness for the opalized woods that come out of Nevada, like the one I showed up earlier. A lot of these are really strongly fluorescent. Some have precious opal in them. None of the ones in my collection, sadly. I really love the kind of crystallized woods that glisten. So here's an example that comes from, this one is probably from the southern part of Alabama, but there are some up in the kind of northern part as well. And I recently put a very large one of these on display in a museum that had been kind of lost to the sands of time. I mentioned my piece from England earlier. They sometimes call this fairy wood out there. And it is very gently silicified and often has little cavities in it that are filled with little vugs, little pockets of crystals. And then my most striking piece is this chap here from Indonesia. So gotta have one life-size crystal skull and petrified wood in my life, and I'm pleased when he showed up.
Wow. I really like what you were sharing there about that ancient wisdom and connecting with those that have gone past. And it really resonates with how I like to use petrified wood. And as my years of working with crystals has kind of gone on, I've started to find different patterns of different times of the year and different times of nature's cycle to lean into different crystals. So I want to go on a bit of a history lesson for a second, because we have coming up in the Northern Hemisphere very soon Halloween, or how it is previously kind of known as Samhain. Some people pronounce it Samhain, but Samhain. Now, the origins of Halloween kind of date back many, many centuries. And as the church was trying to seek dominance across Europe, they basically got into the habit of laying their celebrations over the celebrations of the pagan people of the time. So Christmas, although Jesus wasn't necessarily born around December, was laid over Yule in the middle of winter. Easter, you'll wonder, why are we celebrating, Jesus' death and rebirth with bunnies and eggs? It's because it was laid over the festival of Ostara, a spring pagan festival. And Samhain and Halloween have that similar kind of relationship. So Samhain has always been a time which is marked by the midpoint halfway between the autumn equinox and the winter solstice. So it's around October 31st, but it will vary from day to day if you're really working in alignment with the sun. Now, in the 7th century, Pope Gregory III decided to declare the 1st of November as All Saints' Day because he wasn't quite comfortable with everyone celebrating and honouring the deceased and spirits and ghosts and so on. And so he said, let's shift the narrative a little bit and let's just honour the saints. And from that, the 31st of October became known as All Hallows Eve, which then evolved into Halloween. Now, Halloween is today, and I don't want to be a party pooper, people love to dress up and do all the scaring and all that kind of thing. And it's really, really quite fun. But, sometimes like you hear people complain, oh, everyone's lost the meaning of Christmas. Everyone's kind of lost the meaning of Halloween as well. So Samhain is a time when we actually sit there and honour and acknowledge death and get comfortable with that. And in many Western societies, we don't talk about death as much. We also dive a little bit deeper into our ancestry, into those that have passed. And Nicholas was so beautifully talking about before about how these trees and this petrified wood contains that ancient wisdom of times past. And it's an amazing tool for helping you at this time to really connect with your own ancestry, whether that be your DNA and your physical ancestry from your grandparents, great grandparents, and so on. But I also tend to feel that we have a spiritual ancestry where maybe our soul didn't kind of necessarily stick in one region and we jumped around. And you may find this is a really great time to do past life work and different things like that as well. It is a time when the veil between our realm and the other realm is at its thinnest. So connecting with those of the past, mediumship, and activities like that can be really, really powerful. And using petrified wood after that to not only connect with that wisdom, but as we were talking about before, grounding ourselves after those types of works, it can be really powerful as well. This is also a time for me, I find, to work with that Earth Star chakra, to reconnect and remember that we are part of a greater whole, not only just in the now, but from, we're a blip in the history. That thing, we're part of the narrative that has been, is being now, and will be in the future. And to really help to give us that perspective and to feel that connection, that it's not all about you. So I find this is a really great time of year to connect with exactly what the other two were talking about. That patience, and acknowledge that things take time to be where they are, and the miracle of where you are in your life right now, and know that you are part of a great story to come. And also to ground yourself in that you are part of a bigger picture. There is greater wisdom out there, and especially when you are feeling insignificant or directionless, I find this time of year and working with petrified wood can really help to bring you a better sense of direction and purpose as well. Now, finally, a little bit of bad news. If you're in the Southern Hemisphere, remember I said Samhain is officially halfway between the autumn equinox and the winter solstice. If you look outside right now, you can see spring flowers. So sorry, you've got about another 6 months until you can get into the Halloween/Samhain celebration, because that's when the time of year when we should be acknowledging it as well. But I really love it for that over there. Kyle, I wanted to ask you as well, with petrified wood, and you've always got a lot of bracelets on and that type of thing. Do you find that there's certain just a few certain combinations that might work really well with? I was kind of thinking as you were both talking before, it kind of in a way has a bit of a relationship with amber and jet. Would they be a good trio, or would you use them in grids? Talk me through combos.
I have petrified wood in, I would say, a dozen or so different grids around. So I would say it plays very well with others. I think jet and petrified wood are like two sides of one coin. Like they both come from almost the same starting point and come to a very different ending point, but still similar. And amber as well. It's not something I've done, heaps of, but I would say definitely a comfortable pairing. I find I pair petrified wood with a lot of really fast moving, high vibe, energetic energies. So I have petrified wood with like orange garnet and galena. I have petrified wood with yellow fluorite. I have petrified wood with Lemurian quartz. I have petrified wood with epidote. I have petrified wood with more Lemurian quartz. So that's obviously a good pairing as well. I find whether you need to stop or you need to be going, I think either is really, really good. But I also recommend exploring these other petrified woods, right? The opal, the chrysocolla, the cuprites, the interesting things, I think, are taking that to another level already. But if you don't, just go, okay, I have a piece of opal, I have a piece of petrified wood. Put them together, bring that energy into the best that you can with what you have. I also think if you can work with your petrified wood outside, you will get an incredible connection to it. You will feel it. You will connect to it better. I love being able to like either stand or sit with it between my feet, in the dirt, in the ground, in the grass. That for me is the with trees around, obviously, and thankfully our garden has a couple of trees. It really helps me to tap into that cyclical thing. And I think it's important to ask yourself questions with petrified wood. For me, like Petrified wood, as Nicholas mentioned, brings wisdom, and wisdom comes from asking questions, comes from like figuring things out, not just expecting, right? And so I think it's important to think about, where am I right now? What's actually happening? What's out of my control? What's within my control? Ask yourself these questions of, where is this impatience coming from? This whatever feeling that's not grounded, not balanced, not coming from a place of like being comfortable within yourself. Because I think that's like a lesson of a tree, is just does its thing, right? It's it has what it's going on around it. It does its thing. It grows, stop being bothered by what everyone else is doing far out of your reach, and focus on here, focus on what's around you, focus on what you can feel, touch, be connected to. Like, your reality is very important.
Nicholas, pairing petrified wood with amber and jet, or is there other pairings you really like?
I think that's a really delightful combo. But, depending on the makeup of said petrified wood, since most of what we're going to find is agatized or silicified, in other words, filled with quartz, it goes really well with most things that are made out of quartz. Anything in our kind of normal quartz family, smoky, citrine, amethyst, rose, and so on and so forth. But it's great with agates, with jaspers, with aventurine, with tiger's eye. So I think those all play really nicely together. I also find that if you are one who is interested in working with the so-called high vibe stones, those really expansive, consciousness altering kinds of crystals, this is a wonderful grounding ally to prevent burnout. If you don't like the heaviness of some of the other grounding stones being in such stark contrast to some of those high consciousness stones like moldavite and phenakite and herderite and all the other ites, I think petrified wood is a really good candidate, something that you can consider that maybe slows down the speed at which they're working. So you're not sprinting full speed the whole time, but it's a nice jog instead of a slow amble through life like we normally experience. But it's not so slow that we don't reap the rewards either.
Well, I've learned something today. There I was thinking petrified wood was just scaredy cat trees, but it actually is something much more powerful. And we hope that we've given you a few different ideas today on how you can use petrified wood to tap into those grounding and patient capabilities, especially around the celebration of Samhain. We'd love to know, of course, in the comments how you love to use petrified wood. Have you had any experiences or any really powerful pairings? Pop them in the comments below. And we'll be back next week when we dive into another gift from Mother Earth. Until then, take care and blessed be.